Horrifying. With only 41 crumpled dollars left, and a blizzard threatening to swallow the entire city, Sarah Harper did the one thing no one in Englewood would ever dare. She opened her door to a blood-soaked man, clutching 3 dying children, and that man was Vincent Rossi, the very name Chicago whispers in terror. Touch him, and you die. Do you even realize who you just saved? His voice came out low and broken, cracking in the freezing room. Or were you simply foolish enough to let the devil himself inside? And from the moment that door closed against the storm, the fate of a woman who once had everything and lost it all became forever chained to the fate of a crime lord who believed his heart had died long ago. Do you dare hear the rest of this story? Before we dive into this chilling and mysterious story, please remember to subscribe to the channel, Alex Truths, and like this video. Every subscription, like, and share from you is a huge spiritual gift and an incredibly profound source of motivation for the channel's growth, so we can continue bringing wonderful videos every day to everyone. There would be no greater joy than receiving your love and support through the comments you leave right below this video. Comments sharing your emotions, or telling us which province or city you're living and working in while listening to this story. Alright, let's continue together and immerse ourselves in this amazing, captivating story that's filled with deep emotions. Sarah Harper sat cross-legged on the cracked linoleum floor of her one-room apartment in Englewood, Chicago, counting and recounting the 41 crumpled dollar bills in her trembling hands. October 2025 had arrived colder than any she remembered, and the wind off Lake Michigan howled through the gaps in the window frames like a living thing trying to get inside. She had actually prayed the way her mother used to when Sarah was small, that the number would change if she looked away long enough. But no miracle arrived. Miracles had never come for her. The eviction notice was taped to the inside of her door with duct tape because the landlord's thumbtack had fallen out months ago, and she couldn't afford to replace it. 6 days. 6 days to come up with $975 in back rent, plus $320 in late fees. The paper fluttered every time the wind rattled the single pane of glass as if mocking her. Her hands shook so badly the bills slipped once, scattering like dead leaves. She gathered them again, slower this time, folding each one carefully the way she used to fold. Lesson plans for her 3rd grade classroom before the budget cuts took her job. 4 years teaching at Englewood Elementary, never late, never a complaint, children hugging her legs at dismissal every afternoon. None of it mattered when the district announced restructuring. Last hired, first let go. She had sent out 72 applications since June. 72. Not one interview. Not one call back. The apartment was freezing. The heat had been shut off 3 weeks earlier, and the electric company had threatened disconnection any day. She wore 3 sweaters layered over a long-sleeved shirt, the kind of thin cotton things she'd bought at thrift stores years ago, and wrapped herself in the only blanket she owned, a threadbare fleece throw that once belonged to her mother. Her stomach growled, a low, constant ache she had learned to ignore. Inside the single kitchen cabinet, half a box of saltine crackers, a jar of off-brand peanut butter, with maybe 2 spoonfuls left, and 1 packet of instant oatmeal she had been saving for breakfast tomorrow. Or the day after. She couldn't remember the last time she had eaten anything warm. Sarah's mother, Ellen, was in a state-subsidized assisted living facility on the far south side. Early-stage COPD, the doctors said. She needed a new inhaler every month, $280 without insurance, and the facility fees were climbing faster than Sarah could keep up. Last month she had sold her laptop, her only real possession of value besides the old flip phone she still carried. Before that, her mother's gold cross necklace, the one Ellen had worn every day since Sarah's father died. The necklace had fetched $190 at a pawn shop on 63rd Street. Sarah still felt sick thinking about it. Her father had been gone 9 years, killed in a workplace accident at a construction site near O'Hare. Faulty scaffolding, they said. No one was held accountable. Workers' comp barely covered the funeral. Sarah had been 19, just starting college on loans she was still paying. Ellen had worked double shifts at a diner to keep them afloat after that. Now the roles were reversed and Sarah couldn't even buy her mother's medicine. Guilt clawed at her every waking moment. She had thought about asking the church down the block for help. Street Bernard's had a small food pantry, but the shame burned too hot. What kind of daughter let her mother suffer because of pride? What kind of teacher couldn't even keep a roof over her own head? She curled tighter under the blanket, knees to chest, trying to trap what little body heat she had left. The wind screamed outside. Rain lashed the building in sheets. Then came the knock. It was past 11 at night. No one knocked in this neighborhood after dark unless they wanted something dangerous. Sarah froze, heart slamming against her ribs. Through the peephole, she saw only darkness at first, then a tall figure, broad-shouldered, soaked to the skin in what looked like an expensive wool coat. Water streamed from dark hair plastered to his forehead. In his arms was a small girl, maybe 5 years old, face flushed, eyes closed, lips pale. Clinging to his leg was another child, a boy, perhaps 3, shivering violently. And the man held a second little boy the same age, limp, wheezing in shallow, terrifying gasps. Blood spotted the cuff of the man's coat. Not a lot, but enough to catch the dim hallway light. Every instinct screamed at Sarah to stay silent, to pretend she wasn't home. This was Englewood. Strangers at midnight meant trouble, gang business, robbery, worse. But she was a teacher. She had spent 4 years recognizing the signs of a child in distress: high fever, labored breathing, blue-tinged lips on the wheezing boy. If that child didn't get help soon, he could stop breathing altogether. Her hand moved to the lock before her mind caught up. She opened the door. A blast of icy wind slammed into her, stealing her breath. The man was taller than she had realized, well over 6 feet, built like someone who commanded space without trying. His face was sharp, fair-skinned, handsome in a hard-carved way, but his eyes, steel gray and piercing, were wild with something close to panic. "Please," he said. His voice was low, rough, from cold and fear. "My daughter's burning up. One of the boys, he can't breathe. Our car was forced off the road 6 blocks from here. Phones are dead. I saw your light on." Sarah didn't ask questions. She stepped aside. "Come in. Hurry." He carried the children inside. Rainwater dripped onto her floor in dark pools. The apartment felt even smaller with him in it. His presence filled every corner like smoke. She pointed to the sagging couch. "Lay them there." She ran to the bathroom, grabbed the only clean towel left, and a plastic basin. When she returned, he had placed the girl gently on the cushions. The wheezing boy was already turning bluish around the mouth. Sarah dropped to her knees. "How long has he been like this?" Her voice came out steady, teacher voice. The one she used when a student scraped a knee or started hyperventilating. 20 minutes, maybe 30. It started in the car. The cold Sarah placed her hand on the boy's forehead, burning, but his extremities were icy. Classic asthma attack worsened by fever and exposure. She had seen it dozens of times in her classroom. "I have a nebulizer. It's pediatric. I kept it from school emergencies." "Hold him upright." She raced to the tiny closet that served as storage and bedroom combined, pulled out the machine she had never thought she'd need again. Albuterol vial half full. She assembled it with shaking fingers, plugged it in. The outlet sparked once the wiring in this building was ancient, but the machine hummed to life. "Here, sweetheart," she whispered to the boy as she fitted the mask over his face. "Breathe with me. In, out, slow." The child Nico, she would learn later, clutched her sleeve with tiny fingers. His twin Luca pressed against his father's leg, eyes wide and terrified. The girl Mia stirred, murmuring something incoherent. The man watched every move. His jaw was clenched so tight a muscle jumped in his cheek. He looked like a man holding himself together by threads. Sarah kept the treatment going, stroking Nico's back, murmuring the same calm phrases she used with panicked 8-year-olds. "You're doing great. Just a little more." After 10 minutes, the wheezing eased. Color crept back into his lips. She checked Mia's temperature with the back of her hand still scorching, but the medicine she had given earlier was starting to work. She looked up at the man. "They need to stay warm and hydrated. I have some oatmeal packets," he interrupted, voice hoarse. "You don't have to, I know." She met his eyes for the first time fully. They were beautiful and broken at once, gray like winter sky, rimmed with exhaustion and something deeper. Guilt, fear, she couldn't name it yet, but "I'm not going to let them suffer if I can help." She boiled water on the tiny hot plate, the gas was still on, thank God, and made weak oatmeal for the twins. Mia took a few spoonfuls when she woke enough to swallow. The man accepted a bowl without protest, though he ate mechanically, eyes never leaving his children. Sarah sat on the floor beside the couch, monitoring breathing, changing cool cloths on fevered foreheads. The apartment was silent except for the storm outside and the soft hiss of the nebulizer. She felt his gaze on her more than once, piercing, searching. "Why?" he asked finally, voice barely above a whisper. "You don't know us. You saw the blood on my coat. You still opened the door." Sarah looked at Mia's small hand curled in sleep around her finger. "Because they needed help. That's all." He stared at her a long moment. Something shifted in those gray eyes, surprise, then something softer, almost painful. He turned his face away, jaw working. Sarah didn't ask who he was. Didn't ask about the ambush, the blood, the expensive coat on a man who looked like he belonged in boardrooms or penthouses, not this crumbling building. She focused on the children, on keeping them alive through the night. But inside her chest, something strange was stirring. Fear of him, of what he might be. Curiosity why a man like this had come here, why his eyes looked haunted. And beneath it all, a tiny, impossible spark of warmth. Because for the first time in months, she wasn't alone in the cold. 3 small lives depended on her right now, and a powerful, dangerous stranger was watching her with an intensity that made her heart stutter. She pushed the feeling down. It was ridiculous. Dangerous. She was nothing, a broke, jobless teacher in a freezing apartment. He was whatever he was. Yet as the hours passed, as she rocked Nico through another breathing treatment and sang softly to Mia the way she used to sing to her students, she felt his gaze again and again. Heavy, searching, almost reverent. And in his own chest, Vincent Rossi felt something crack open that he had thought sealed shut forever. Guilt had lived in him for years. Guilt for the blood on his hands, for the empire, built on fear for the wife. He couldn't save for the children who woke, screaming for a mother who would never return. Remorse was his constant companion, gnawing relentless. But watching this thin, exhausted woman, cheeks hollow from hunger, hands gentle despite everything she had lost, give his children the last of what little she had. Something fiercer than guilt rose in him, protectiveness, fierce and sudden. And beneath it a longing so sharp it stole his breath. He had never believed in fate. Not after everything. But tonight, in this miserable apartment on the south side, fate had knocked on his door in the form of a woman who should have turned away and didn't. And Vincent Rossi, the man they called the ghost of Chicago's underworld, felt the first real stirrings of love in years. Love that terrified him. Love that promised to tear him apart. Because he knew what his world did to people like her. And yet he already knew he would burn it all down before he let it touch her. The knock came again, sharper this time, urgent, almost desperate. Sarah's heart lurched so violently she pressed one palm to her chest as if to hold it inside her ribs. She had already decided. The children needed her. That was the only fact that mattered in this freezing, crumbling room. She turned the deadbolt with numb fingers and pulled the door open wider. Cold air rushed in like a slap. The man stepped across the threshold, carrying the smallest boy, the one whose breathing had terrified her most, while the other twin clung to his leg like a shadow. The little girl rested limp against his shoulder cheeks, scarlet with fever, tiny fists curled into the wet wool of his coat. Sarah closed the door quickly behind them, shutting out the howling wind. The apartment seemed to shrink around the 4 strangers. Rain dripped steadily from the man's coat onto the warped floorboards, forming dark circles that spread like ink. "Put them on the couch," she said softly, voice trembling only a little. "Please. I'll get the nebulizer ready again if he needs it." He obeyed without a word, laying the wheezing boy down first, then easing the girl beside him. The second twin, Luca, she would learn much later, refused to let go of his father's pant leg, eyes huge and glassy with fear. Sarah knelt immediately beside the sick child. Nico. The name came to her unbidden as she touched his clammy forehead again. Still burning, still struggling. She fitted the mask back over his small face, turned the machine on once more. The soft hiss of aerosol filled the silence between thunderclaps. The man stood over them like a sentinel, water pooling at his polished shoes. Expensive shoes. Italian leather, she noticed absently. The kind that cost more than her monthly rent. The coat charcoal cashmere hung heavy with rain, yet even soaked it screamed money. Power. A world so far from hers it might as well have been another planet. She didn't look up at him. Couldn't. Not yet. Instead, she focused on the children. "Shh, sweetheart," she whispered to Nico, stroking damp curls back from his forehead. "You're safe now. Just breathe with the medicine. In, out. Slow like we practiced." His tiny chest rose and fell in shallow bursts. Each wheeze tore at something deep inside her chest. She had seen children like this before. Classroom asthma attacks, frantic calls to parents who sometimes never came. She had stayed late so many nights, holding small hands until breathing eased. But never in her own home, never with nothing left to give. The man finally spoke again, voice low and ragged. "Thank you." 2 words. Simple. Yet they landed like stones in still water, rippling through her. Sarah swallowed. "He's stabilizing. The albuterol is working, but he needs to stay warm. All of them do." She rose on unsteady legs, too many nights without proper sleep. Too many meals skipped and moved to the kitchen corner. The hot plate sputtered to life. She poured the last of her tap water into a small pot dropped in the single remaining oatmeal packet. It would barely make 4 child-sized servings. Her own stomach twisted in protest, but she ignored it. She had gone longer without food. When she turned back with the steaming bowls balanced on a chipped plate, the man was kneeling beside the couch. One large hand rested gently on Mia's forehead, the other smoothing Luca's back in slow, careful circles. The tenderness in the gesture shocked her so deeply, she nearly dropped the food. This man, whoever he was, loved his children with a ferocity that made her throat close. "Here," she said quietly, setting the plate on the scarred coffee table. "It's not much." He looked up at her. Those gray eyes again. Storm-colored, haunted. For one heartbeat, she thought she saw something break behind them, something raw and bleeding. "You haven't eaten," he said. "Not a question. I'm fine." The lie came automatically. She had said it to herself so many times it felt like truth. His jaw tightened. He studied her, really studied her for the first time. Took in the hollows of her cheeks, the way her sweaters hung loose on thin shoulders, the faint tremor in her hands that had nothing to do with cold. "You're not fine," he said quietly. Sarah felt heat rush to her face, humiliation sharp and sudden. She wanted to disappear, wanted the floor to open and swallow her whole. Instead, she lifted her chin a fraction. "I can manage," she whispered. "Please, eat. They need their father strong." Something flickered across his face, pain maybe, or recognition. He took one bowl, handed the others to the children when they stirred enough to sit up. Mia managed a few spoonfuls before her eyes drifted shut again. Luca ate hungrily, small hands clutching the spoon like treasure. Nico mask finally removed, took tiny bites between exhausted breaths. Sarah retreated to the floor beside the couch again, knees drawn up, arms wrapped around herself. She watched them eat what should have been her last meal for days. Watched the man feed his daughter another spoonful when her strength failed. Watched the way his shoulders relaxed only slightly when color began returning to their faces. The silence stretched, broken only by the storm and the children's soft breathing. Then he spoke again, almost too low to hear. "My name is Vincent." Sarah blinked. The name felt too ordinary for a man who looked like he belonged in penthouse shadows. "Sarah," she answered, voice small. "Sarah Harper." He nodded once. "Sarah." The way he said her name, quiet, reverent, sent a shiver down her spine that had nothing to do with cold. She risked a glance at him. Rain had darkened his hair to near black. Droplets still clung to his lashes. His coat, expensive as it was, could not hide the tension coiled in every line of his body. The blood on his cuff had dried to a dull rust-brown stain. Her stomach twisted again, not from hunger this time. "You're hurt," she said softly. He followed her gaze to the cuff, flexed his hand once. "Not mine," he answered. The words landed heavy between them. Sarah's pulse spiked. Fear bloomed fresh and bright in her chest. She thought of the ambush he had mentioned so casually, thought of the cars forced off roads, thought of men who carried guns and settled scores in the dark. She should have been terrified. She was terrified. Yet she could not look away from the way he cradled Mia's small head against his chest, now murmuring something too soft for her to catch. The gentleness there warred violently with everything the bloodstain implied. Inside Vincent, the war was worse. He had lived in violence so long it had become background noise, necessary, inevitable, almost comforting in its familiarity. But tonight the noise roared. Tonight it screamed. Because this woman, this fragile, starving woman who smelled faintly of school chalk and cheap laundry soap, had opened her door to monsters without hesitation. She had fed his children her last food. She had pressed medicine she could not afford into their mouths. She had stayed calm when Nico's lips turned blue. And now she sat on the floor in 3 threadbare sweaters, pretending hunger didn't claw at her insides, pretending fear didn't live behind her eyes. Vincent Rossi had built an empire on control, on never letting anyone touch the soft places inside him. Yet something had cracked tonight. Cracked wide. He felt it happening, felt the fissure spreading through bone and sinew, felt heat bloom behind his ribs, fierce and unfamiliar. Love, not soft, not gentle. Love like a blade. Love like fire. Love that terrified him more than any rival ever had, because he knew what his world did to light like hers, knew how quickly it extinguished. And still, he already knew he would tear the city apart before he let it happen. Sarah felt his stare again, burning relentless. She hugged her knees tighter, trying to make herself smaller. "You should go when the storm eases," she whispered. I don't have anything else to offer." Vincent's throat worked. "You've already given more than anyone ever has," he said roughly. She shook her head. It was nothing. It was everything. The words hung between them, simple, devastating. Sarah felt tears sting her eyes. She blinked them back fiercely. She would not cry in front of this stranger. Would not let him see how close she was to breaking. But the tears came anyway, silent, hot, sliding down cheeks already chapped from cold. Vincent watched them fall. Something inside him shattered completely. He moved before he could stop himself, slowly, carefully, as though approaching something wild and wounded. He knelt beside her on the floor, heedless of the wet coat, heedless of the bloodstain. "Sarah," he said again. Her name in his mouth sounded like prayer. She looked up, eyes wide, shimmering, terrified. He reached out, hesitated, then brushed one tear away with the pad of his thumb. The touch was electric. She gasped softly. He froze. Neither moved. Outside, thunder rolled long, low, mournful. Inside, two hearts beat too fast, too loud in a freezing apartment on the south side of Chicago. Vincent's voice cracked when he spoke again. "I will protect you," he said. "All of you. From now on." Sarah stared at him, dazed, disoriented, dizzy with shock and cold and something far more dangerous. She didn't understand. Couldn't understand. But deep in the hollow place where hope had died months ago, a tiny, reckless spark flickered to life. And Vincent Rossi, wealthy, powerful, broken, felt that same spark catch inside his chest and burn. Burn so fiercely he feared it would consume him whole. Because love at first sight, at first touch, at first shared breath in a storm had arrived without warning, and it was already tearing him apart. The first pale light of dawn slipped through the thin, yellowed curtain, like a thief, weak and hesitant. Sarah had not slept. Not truly. She had dozed in the hard wooden chair beside the couch, waking every 20 minutes to press her palm to Nico's forehead, to listen to Mia's shallow breaths, to adjust the thin blanket over Luca's small shoulders. Her neck ached fiercely. Her back burned from hours of stillness, but the children breathed easier now. The fever had broken in Mia sometime after 3 in the morning. Nico's wheezing had quieted to soft, even sighs. Luca slept curled against his sister like a comma. Sarah sat motionless, staring at the 3 small forms. Her own body felt distant, hollowed out, fragile as paper. Hunger gnawed deeper now, a sharp, twisting pain low in her belly. She had not eaten since the morning before last. The oatmeal she had given them had been her last food. She told herself it did not matter. Children first. Always children first. Across the room, Vincent had not moved from the floor where he had finally settled hours ago, back against the wall, knees drawn up, coat still damp and heavy around his shoulders. He had not slept either. His eyes, those storm-gray eyes, had remained open, fixed on his children, fixed on her. She had felt the weight of his gaze every time she stirred, every time she whispered comfort to one of the little ones. It burned. It soothed. It terrified her. Now, as morning light strengthened, he rose, slowly graceful despite exhaustion, and crossed to the couch. He knelt, brushed Mia's hair back from her face with a tenderness that made Sarah's throat close. The little girl stirred, eyes fluttering open. "Daddy," her voice was small, hoarse. "I'm here, sweetheart." His own voice cracked just once, barely audible. He pressed his lips to her forehead. "You're okay. You're all okay." Mia's gaze drifted past him to Sarah. Recognition flickered. A tiny, sleepy smile curved her mouth. "Warm lady," she murmured, reaching one small hand toward Sarah. Sarah's heart seized. She leaned forward, took that tiny hand in hers. It was cool now, no longer scorching. "I'm here too," she whispered. Vincent watched the exchange. Something raw and unguarded flashed across his face, gratitude so deep it looked like pain. He stood abruptly. "I have to take them home," he said quietly. But first, he reached into the inner pocket of his coat, pulled out a thick envelope, cream-colored, expensive, and a small white card. He placed both in Sarah's hand. She stared down at them, confused. $4,000, he said. "Cash. And my number. If you ever need anything at all, call me." Sarah's fingers tightened around the envelope involuntarily. $4,000. More money than she had seen in one place in years. Enough to pay the rent. Enough for Ellen's inhalers for months. Enough for groceries, real groceries, not just crackers and peanut butter scraped from the bottom of the jar. She looked up at him, eyes wide, shimmering. "I can't." Her voice broke. "I didn't do this for money. I know." His tone was rough, almost angry. "That's why I'm giving it to you." She shook her head, tears welling again. "You don't understand. I have nothing. Nothing. This." She lifted the envelope slightly. "This is everything, but I didn't help them so you would pay me." Vincent's jaw clenched. He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell rain and expensive cologne, and something darker like gun oil or metal. "You gave my children your last food," he said, voice low and fierce. "Your last medicine, your warmth, when you had nothing left to give. This isn't payment. This is..." He searched for the word, eyes burning into hers. "This is the least I can do." Sarah felt the floor tilt beneath her. Dizziness swept in sharp, disorienting. She swayed slightly. Vincent's hand shot out, steadying her elbow with surprising gentleness. "Easy," he murmured. She stared at his hand on her arm, so large, so steady, then up at his face. Those gray eyes held hers unblinking. In them, she saw torment, guilt that had lived in him for years, remorse that had carved deep lines around his mouth, conflict that raged like a storm behind the calm surface. He released her slowly, as though afraid she might shatter. "I have to go," he said again. "My people are waiting outside." Sarah nodded numbly. She watched as he gathered the children, lifting Mia into his arms, coaxing Luca to stand supporting Nico against his side. The little boy leaned heavily, still weak but breathing. At the door, Vincent paused. "Sarah." She looked up. "Thank you," he said simply. "For saving them." Then he was gone. The door clicked shut behind him. Silence rushed back in cold, heavy, deafening. Sarah stood frozen in the middle of the room for a long moment. Then her knees buckled. She sank to the floor, envelope clutched to her chest, and sobbed quiet, wrenching sobs that shook her thin frame. $4,000. She cried until there was nothing left, until exhaustion, and hunger and relief and terror, and something dangerously close to hope left her empty. When the tears finally stopped, she forced herself to stand. She walked to the landlord's office 6 blocks away on shaking legs. The wind cut through her thin coat like knives. She kept her head down, clutching the envelope inside her sweater like contraband. The landlord, a heavy man with small, suspicious eyes, looked up from his desk when she entered. His expression shifted from boredom to faint surprise when she placed $975 in rent and $320 in late fees on the scarred wood. He counted slowly. Twice. Then he tore the eviction notice in half and dropped the pieces into the trash. "You're paid up," he grunted. "For now." Sarah walked out into the cold without a word. Next, she went to the pharmacy on 63rd. $280 for Ellen's new inhaler, and a month's worth of controller medication. The pharmacist raised an eyebrow at the cash, but said nothing. Then the small grocery on the corner, real food for the first time in weeks. Chicken breasts, fresh carrots, apples, milk, eggs, a loaf of whole wheat bread. She carried the bags home slowly, arms trembling from weakness and disbelief. When she stepped back into the apartment, the silence felt different. Less suffocating, less final. She put the groceries away with careful reverence, each item placed like a treasure. Then she sat at the tiny table, opened her ancient flip phone, and searched the name he had given her. Vincent Rossi, Chicago. The results loaded slowly on the weak Wi-Fi. Headlines appeared one after another. Rossi family maintains iron grip on Southside operations. Vincent Rossi, the ghost of Chicago, suspected in disappearance of rival. Lieutenant outfit power struggle. Rossi consolidates control amid violence. Grainy photographs. Vincent in a tailored black suit outside a courthouse. Face cold and unreadable. Vincent stepping from a sleek black SUV flanked by men in dark coats. Vincent at a charity gala, smiling thinly for the cameras. Eyes flat. The most powerful remaining figure in Chicago's organized crime world. A man suspected in countless acts the papers called brutal and calculated. A man who had knelt on her floor last night and thanked her with tears in his eyes. Sarah's hand shook so badly the phone slipped from her fingers and clattered to the table. She stared at the blank screen, breath coming in short, painful bursts. Horror rose in her, cold, choking. Confusion followed, dizzying, numbing. He had sat in her apartment, eaten her last oatmeal, held his fevered daughter while Sarah pressed medicine to her lips. And he was this. A ghost. A killer. A king in a world of shadows. Yet he had looked at her like she was the only light he had ever seen. Sarah pressed both hands to her mouth to stifle the sob that wanted to escape. She thought of Ellen, thought of the inhaler now safe in her purse, thought of the groceries in the refrigerator, thought of Mia's small hand in hers, thought of Vincent's thumb brushing away her tear. And beneath the fear, beneath the shock, the horror, the violent confusion, something else stirred. Something reckless. Something burning. She remembered the way he had said her name. Sarah. Remembered the way his hand had steadied her elbow, strong, careful, reverent. Remembered the torment in his eyes when he spoke of protection. And deep inside her chest, where hope had died long ago, a spark flared brighter. Love. Impossible. Terrifying. Wrong. But real. Vincent Rossi, wealthy beyond imagination, powerful enough to make men disappear, tormented by ghosts of his own making, had looked at her and felt the same impossible thing. He had felt it the moment she opened the door, felt it deepen with every gentle word she spoke to his children. Felt it become a living flame when she cried silent tears on her own floor rather than take food from their mouths. And now, driving away from Englewood in the back of an armored SUV, children safe in car seats beside him, he felt it sear through every barrier he had ever built. Love. Fierce. Consuming. Terrifying. He stared out at the gray Chicago streets blurring past and made a silent vow. He would protect her. From his enemies. From his world. From himself. Even if it tore him apart. Because Sarah Harper, thin, starving, brave beyond measure, had given him back something he thought lost forever. Hope. And Vincent Rossi, ghost king, broken man, would burn the city to ashes before he let anyone take that hope from her again. The days after Vincent left blurred into a strange, fragile haze. Sarah moved through them like someone underwater, slow, careful, afraid any sudden movement might shatter the thin layer of relief that had settled over her life. The refrigerator hummed softly, now stocked with food she dared not believe was real. Ellen's new inhaler sat on the nightstand in the assisted living room, its plastic case gleaming under the fluorescent light. Rent was paid. The eviction notice was gone. For the first time in months, Sarah woke without the immediate crushing weight of dread pressing on her chest. Yet the relief felt stolen, temporary, unworthy. She still counted every dollar spent, still skipped meals when the hunger felt safer than risk, still woke at 3 a.m, convinced the money would vanish like a dream. She walked the 6 blocks to the bus stop each day with her head-down coat, pulled tight against the October wind, wondering if anyone could see the secret burning inside her. $4,000 from a man the newspapers called a ghost. She had not called the number on the card. She had stared at it instead, night after night, until the edges curled from the heat of her thumb. The white cardstock felt too clean, too expensive against her cracked palms. She kept it hidden beneath the thin mattress as though hiding it could hide what it meant. What he meant. Because every time she closed her eyes, she saw him, Vincent Rossi, kneeling on her filthy floor, gray eyes soft with something she did not dare name. Vincent carrying his fevered daughter like she was made of glass. Vincent's thumb brushing her tear away, gentle, reverent, impossible. And every time she remembered, her heart tore itself in two. Fear screamed that he was dangerous, that the blood on his cuff had not been an accident, that men like him did not leave envelopes of cash without expecting something in return. Yet beneath the fear burned something hotter, fiercer, longing, a desperate, aching wish that the kindness she had offered had mattered to someone powerful enough to change her life, that the warmth she had given his children had reached into the cold places inside him. She hated herself for it. She was nothing, a laid-off teacher in a crumbling building. Thin arms, hollow cheeks, clothes that hung like defeat. He was everything she was not. And still, she dreamed of him. On the 6th morning after the storm, October 28, 2025, her ancient flip phone buzzed against the table. Unknown number. Her hand shook so badly she nearly dropped it. She answered anyway. Sarah Harper. The voice was deep, calm, familiar in a way that made her knees weaken. Marcus. She recognized it instantly, the man who had driven the sleek black SUV, that Dawn the one who had opened the door for Vincent and the children without a word. Yes, she whispered. Mr. Rossi would like to speak with you. There's an opportunity he believes you'll want to hear. A car will arrive in 1 hour. Sarah's breath caught. I don't. 1 hour, Marcus repeated gently. He'll explain everything. The line went dead. She stood frozen in the middle of the tiny apartment phone, still pressed to her ear, heart hammering so hard it hurt. 1 hour. She looked down at herself, faded jeans, sweater with holes at the elbows, hair pulled back in a messy knot because she had no money for conditioner. She looked like exactly what she was, poor. Broken. Powerless. Yet she showered in the lukewarm trickle that passed for hot water, scrubbed until her skin stung, dressed in the least worn clothes she owned. She told herself it was only curiosity. Only politeness. She lied. When the glossy black sedan pulled up outside, quiet, expensive, gleaming against the cracked sidewalk, the entire block seemed to pause. Neighbors peered from windows. A group of teenagers on the corner fell silent. Marcus stepped out, opened the rear door without expression. Sarah slid inside on legs that barely held her. The drive crossed the city Englewood's gray streets, giving way to the glittering towers of the Loop, then north to the Gold Coast. She watched the world change through tinted glass, from sagging porches and boarded storefronts to marble lobbies and doormen in crisp uniforms. The disparity felt violent, personal. They stopped outside an Italian restaurant on Michigan Avenue. Closed for the day, windows dark, but the door opened the moment Marcus approached. Inside, white tablecloths, candlelight flickering, even at noon empty, except for one table by the window overlooking the park. Vincent rose as she entered. He wore a charcoal suit, perfectly tailored, perfectly still. No trace of the drenched, desperate man from the storm. Yet his eyes, those gray, tormented eyes, found hers immediately, and something raw flashed through them. Sarah, he said. Her name in his mouth still sounded like prayer. She stopped several feet away, hands clasped tightly in front of her. You wanted to see me, she said softly, voice trembling despite her effort to steady it. He gestured to the chair opposite. Please. A waiter appeared silent, efficient, poured water into crystal glasses, then vanished. Vincent sat, studied her for a long moment. The children haven't stopped talking about you, he said quietly. Mia asks for the warm lady every night. Nico asks if you'll come read to him again. Luca, he just holds the blanket you wrapped him in and won't let go. Sarah's throat tightened. Tears stung her eyes. "They're safe," she whispered. "Thanks to you." His voice roughened. "They're safe because of you." She looked down at her hands, chapped, thin, trembling. Vincent leaned forward slightly. "I need someone to care for them," he said. "Full-time. Live-in. Someone they trust. Someone who can help them heal." Sarah's breath stopped. "The salary is $9,500 a month," he continued calm, as though discussing the weather. "Room and board included. Your own suite in the house. Full medical coverage for you and for your mother. I've already arranged for Ellen to be moved to a private pulmonology center on Lakeshore Drive. Specialists. 24-hour care. The best." Sarah swayed in the chair. The numbers crashed over her like a wave, too big, too bright, too impossible. $9,500 a month. Ellen's safe. No more counting pennies for inhalers. No more choosing between heat and food. But the man offering it. She lifted her gaze to his. "I know who you are," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "I looked you up." Vincent did not flinch. "I expected you would. You run things. The kind of things the papers say are dangerous. Illegal." He nodded once. Slow. Honest. "I won't lie to you," he said. "I am what they say. I've done things most people would call unforgivable. My world is not safe. It never has been." Sarah felt the floor drop beneath her again, dizziness, nausea, a cold sweat breaking across her skin. "Then why?" Her voice cracked. "Why would you want me there? I'm nobody. I have nothing." Vincent's eyes darkened with pain, with longing, with something so fierce it stole her breath. "Because that night you had $41 and one packet of oatmeal," he said quietly. "And you still opened the door. You still gave everything. You didn't ask questions. You didn't turn away. You saved my children when no one else could have." He paused. Swallowed. "Mia hasn't smiled, not really since her mother was taken from us 2.5 years ago. The twins wake screaming every night. Nannies lasted days, weeks at most. They saw the money, the house, the guards, and they saw a criminal's children. They never saw the pain. They never saw the little boy who can't breathe without fear, the little girl who whispers for her mother in her sleep." His voice dropped lower. "You saw them. You held them. You made them feel safe." Sarah pressed a hand to her mouth. Tears slipped free. "I can't," she whispered. "It's too dangerous. I'm not strong enough for your world." Vincent leaned closer. "I'm not asking you to be part of my world," he said. "I'm asking you to be part of theirs. To give them what I can't. To give them warmth. To give them a chance to heal." He reached across the table slowly, carefully, and covered her trembling hand with his. The touch burned. Sarah gasped softly. Vincent's thumb brushed the back of her knuckles, once gentle. "I will protect you," he said again, voice rough with emotion. "With everything I have. No one will touch you. No one will hurt you. I swear it on their lives." Sarah stared at their joined hands, his large and steady, hers small and scarred from years of scraping by. Inside her, the war raged, louder than ever. Fear sharp, paralyzing. Shame for wanting this so badly. Hope tiny, fragile, terrifying. And love that had ignited that first night and refused to die. She looked up into his eyes, saw the torment there, guilt for the life he had built, remorse for the blood on his hands, violent conflict between the man he was and the man he wanted to be for her. "I need time," she whispered. Vincent nodded, released her hand slowly. "Take all the time you need," he said. "But know this, the offer stands, and so does my promise." He placed a small envelope on the table, address, contact information, instructions. Then he stood. "Marcus will drive you home." Sarah rose on unsteady legs. At the door she paused, turned back. "Why me?" she asked, again voice small, broken. "You could have anyone." Vincent looked at her, really looked, and for the first time she saw the faintest pained smile touch his mouth. "Because you had nothing left," he said softly. "And you still gave everything." He stepped aside. Sarah walked out into the bright October afternoon, envelope clutched to her chest, heart tearing itself apart with every beat. Behind her, Vincent watched her go, gray eyes burning, fists clenched at his sides. Love consumed him. Love that terrified him. Love that would destroy him if he failed her. And still he would not let her go. Not now. Not ever. 3 days after the lunch at the restaurant, Sarah stood once more in front of her cracked mirror, staring at a woman she barely recognized. The circles under her eyes had softened slightly. Sleep came easier now that the heat stayed on, but the thinness remained. Sharp collarbones pressing against pale skin, wrists fragile as twigs. She wore the only dress she owned that could pass for presentable navy blue cotton knee-length bought years ago for a school event. It hung loose on her frame sleeve's too long hem frayed where she had mended it with mismatched thread. She had said yes. The word had slipped out on the phone the night before, soft trembling final. Yes to the money. Yes to the safety for Ellen. Yes to the children who still whispered her name in their sleep. Yes to Vincent Rossi, even knowing what the world called him. Now Marcus waited downstairs in the same black sedan. Sarah carried one small suitcase, everything she owned folded inside. 3 sweaters, 2 pairs of jeans, underwear, a worn paperback of Charlotte's Web she had read to her 3rd graders, and the white card with his number still tucked in, the side pocket like a talisman. The drive north felt longer this time. The city shifted again, gray tenements, fading glass towers rising until they reached the Gold Coast. Iron gates opened silently before a 3-story limestone mansion that overlooked Lake Michigan. Security cameras tracked the car. Men in dark coats stood at discreet intervals along the drive, silent, watchful. Sarah's stomach twisted into knots. Inside the foyer alone could have swallowed her old apartment 3 times over. Marble floors gleamed under a crystal chandelier. Twin staircases curved upward like wings. Fresh flowers, white roses, stood in tall vases on console tables. The scent of them made her dizzy. Marcus led her up the east wing staircase without speaking. At the end of a long hallway lined with oil paintings, he opened a door. "Your room." Sarah stepped inside and froze. The space was larger than her entire Englewood apartment. A king bed with crisp white linens. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake. A private bathroom with marble tile and gold fixtures. A walk-in closet already stocked with new clothes, simple dresses, sweaters, jeans, all in her size. Tags still attached. She touched one sleeve cashmere so soft it felt like a sin. Marcus cleared his throat. "Mister, Rossi wants you to settle in. The children are in the playroom. I'll take you there when you're ready." He left her alone. Sarah sank onto the edge of the bed. The mattress gave beneath her like a cloud. She pressed her palms to her face and tried not to cry. This was not her life. She did not belong here. Yet the children did. She changed into one of the new sweaters, soft gray wool, that smelled faintly of lavender, and followed Marcus down another hallway. The playroom doors stood open. Laughter, small, tentative, spilled out. Mia saw her first. Warm lady. The little girl launched herself across the room. Sarah dropped to her knees just in time to catch her. Mia's arms wrapped tight around her neck, face buried in her shoulder. "You came," Mia whispered. "You really came." Sarah held her close, breathing in the clean scent of baby shampoo and strawberries. Tears slipped free before she could stop them. "I promised," she whispered back. Luca and Nico appeared next. Luca shy, Nico bolder. They pressed against her sides, small hands clutching her sweater. Sarah gathered all 3 into her arms, rocking gently, murmuring the same soft nonsense she used to calm crying students. Across the doorway, Vincent stood half in shadow. He did not enter. He only watched arms, folded face, unreadable. But his eyes betrayed him. They burned with something so fierce, so tender it stole Sarah's breath. Days turned to weeks. Sarah woke each morning to sunlight pouring across silk sheets. She ate breakfast with the children in a sunlit dining room, fresh fruit, warm oatmeal eggs cooked exactly how Mia liked them. She taught them in the playroom letters, numbers, breathing exercises for Nico's asthma. She read stories until their eyelids drooped. She held them through nightmares. She sang lullabies when the house felt too quiet, and every evening she watched Vincent come home. He arrived later than most men, dark suit, impeccable tie loosened only after the front door closed. He would pause at the playroom threshold, lean against the frame, and watch. Never interrupting, never stepping fully inside. Just watching. Sarah felt his gaze like sunlight on skin, warm, relentless, dangerous. One afternoon, while the children napped, she wandered the east wing hallway, curious, restless. A door stood slightly ajar. She hesitated, then pushed it open. An office. Dark wood, leather-bound books, a massive desk. On the desk, a single-framed photograph turned face down. She lifted it. A younger Vincent, smiling unguarded, stood beside a beautiful woman with dark hair and laughing eyes. In her arms, a newborn Mia, the twins not yet born. Sarah's fingers trembled. She set the frame down gently. Beneath it lay a folder, old edges worn. She should have walked away. Instead, she opened it. Medical bills. Her father's name at the top. Dates from 9 years ago. Amounts that had once crushed her family. Paid in full, anonymous donor. A handwritten note clipped inside Vincent's bold script. For the man who tried to walk away clean. May he rest in peace. His daughter will never know hunger again. Sarah's knees buckled. She caught herself on the desk, breath coming in short, painful gasps. Her father had not died in a random accident. He had died because he had tried to leave something dark behind, something tied to Vincent's family. And Vincent had known, had carried the guilt for years, had paid the bills in secret atonement, had found her years later on the stormiest night of her life. Fate. Cruel. Merciful. Unbearable. She slid to the floor back against the desk and wept silent, wrenching sobs that shook her whole body. Vincent found her there an hour later. He froze in the doorway, face draining of color. "Sarah." She looked up, eyes red, swollen, shattered. "You knew," she whispered. "All this time. You knew." He stepped inside, slowly closed the door. "Yes." The single word landed like a blow. Sarah pressed a hand to her chest as though she could hold her heart together. "My father. He died because of people like you." Vincent flinched visibly. "He tried to leave," he said quietly. "My father's men. They didn't let him. I was 23. I found out years later. I couldn't undo it. I could only make sure his family didn't suffer the same way." Sarah stared at him, horror, grief, fury, longing, all twisting together until she could barely breathe. "You paid the bills," she said. "You made sure we ate. And then you found me. In the storm, with your children." Vincent sank to one knee before her, slow, careful, as though approaching something sacred. "I never meant for you to know," he said, voice raw. "I never wanted you to carry this too." Sarah reached out, hesitant, touched his cheek. His eyes closed at the contact. "I hate what your world did to my father," she whispered. "I hate what it still does to you." Vincent turned his face into her palm. "But I don't hate you," she continued, voice breaking. "I can't, because you carried the guilt alone for years. Because you saved us without ever asking for thanks. Because you love those children so much it hurts you to breathe when they're scared." Tears slipped down Vincent's face, silent, unstoppable. Sarah cupped his face with both hands. "You're not the monster the papers say," she whispered. "You're a man who's bleeding inside every day." Vincent's breath shuddered. "And you," he said hoarsely, "are the only person who's ever seen that." He leaned forward slowly, forehead resting against hers. Neither moved. The room was quiet except for their breathing. Then soft, tentative, Sarah pressed her lips to his. The kiss was gentle at first, questioning, trembling. Then Vincent's hands rose to cradle her face, and the kiss deepened, fierce, desperate, full of years of loneliness and guilt and sudden burning hope. When they parted, both were shaking. Vincent rested his forehead against hers again. "I will spend the rest of my life making this right," he vowed. "For you, for them, for your father." Sarah nodded, tears falling freely now. "I believe you," she whispered. And in that quiet office, surrounded by shadows and secrets, they held each other like survivors of the same shipwreck. Outside, the wind off Lake Michigan howled. Inside, two broken hearts began slowly, painfully to mend. The mansion settled into a rhythm Sarah had never known existed. Mornings began with sunlight spilling across silk sheets and the soft patter of small feet down the hallway. Mia would climb onto the bed, first warm little body curling against Sarah's side, followed by Luca and Nico, who preferred to burrow under the covers like puppies seeking shelter. Breakfast followed in the sunroom, fresh berries, warm muffins, eggs, prepared 3 different ways, because each child had their own preference. Sarah ate slowly, still, half expecting the food to disappear, still marveling at the way the china clinked softly against saucers instead of chipped ceramic plates. Afternoons were for lessons in the playroom. Simple things at first, shapes, colors, the alphabet traced with fat crayons. But soon the children asked for more. Stories, songs, breathing games when Nico's chest felt tight. Sarah taught them the same quiet techniques she had once used in her Englewood classroom: count to 4 on the inhale, hold for 4, exhale for 6. Nico's attacks grew less frequent, less severe. Mia began drawing pictures again, bright, hopeful things instead of the gray scribbles she had shown the nannies before. Luca started speaking in full sentences, his voice small but steady. Every evening Vincent came home. He no longer lingered only at the doorway. He stepped inside now slowly, as though testing whether the room would allow him. He sat on the floor with them, long legs folded awkwardly, and listened, while Mia read aloud from picture books, or while Luca showed him towers built from wooden blocks. His voice, deep measured, softened when he spoke to them. "Good job, sweetheart. That's my brave boy." Simple words, devastating in their tenderness. Sarah watched him from the corner armchair, heart twisting with every glance. She had not kissed him again since that night in the office. Neither had spoken of it. Yet the air between them crackled, silent, electric, unbearable. A brush of fingers when passing a plate, a shared look across the dinner table that lasted 1 heartbeat too long. The way he would pause mid-sentence when she entered a room, gray eyes darkening with something raw and unguarded. She told herself it was gratitude. Relief, The natural bond formed when two people saved each other's children. She lied. Every night she lay in the vast bed, staring at the ceiling body, aching with a hunger that had nothing to do with food. She remembered the taste of his mouth, salt and remorse and desperate need. She remembered the way his hands had trembled when he cupped her face. She remembered the broken sound he made when she whispered she believed him. And she hated herself for wanting more. Because she still woke some nights, gasping from dreams of Englewood, cold wind rattling the window eviction notice taped to the door, Ellen coughing in the next room. She still felt the hollow shame of hunger, the humiliation of counting pennies for bus fare, the bone-deep exhaustion of nights spent shivering under one thin blanket. Those memories lived in her like scars raised tender, impossible to ignore. Yet here she was, surrounded by luxury that felt obscene, silk sheets against skin that had once known only rough cotton, meals prepared by a chef who asked her preferences, a closet full of clothes she had not earned, protection from a man whose name alone made other men lower their eyes. The disparity tore at her. One evening in early November, after the children were asleep, Sarah slipped out to the terrace overlooking the lake. The wind off the water was sharp, carrying the scent of winter. She wrapped her arms around herself, thin sweater no match for the cold, and stared at the dark water. Footsteps behind her. She did not turn. Vincent stopped beside her, close enough that she felt his warmth, far enough that he did not touch her. "You'll freeze out here," he said quietly. "I'm used to cold," she answered, soft, almost bitter. He removed his suit jacket without a word and draped it over her shoulders. Cashmere. Still warm from his body. It smelled of him. Cedar. Leather. Something darker. Sarah closed her eyes against the sudden sting of tears. "Why do you do that?" she whispered. "Why do you keep giving me things I don't deserve?" Vincent turned to face her, slow, deliberate. "Because you deserve everything," he said, "and I have spent too many years giving nothing to the people who mattered." She looked up at him, then really looked. Moonlight carved shadows across his face, highlighting the lines of exhaustion, the faint scar along his jaw, the storm-gray eyes that never quite rested. "You carry so much guilt," she said softly. "It's eating you alive." Vincent's throat worked. "I deserve it." Sarah stepped closer, hesitant, trembling. "No," she whispered. "You don't. Not anymore." He stared at her, breath catching. Then slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he lifted one hand and brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. The touch was electric. Sarah's breath hitched. Vincent froze, hand-hovering eyes searching hers for permission, for rejection, for anything. She rose on her toes. Their lips met soft, at first questioning. Then hunger broke through. Vincent's arms came around her, strong, careful, desperate. He kissed her like a drowning man, finding air deep, consuming, full of years of restraint finally snapping. Sarah clung to him, fingers threading through his hair, body pressing against his as though she could crawl inside his skin. The kiss turned fierce teeth and tongues and quiet broken sounds neither could suppress. When they parted, gasping foreheads pressed together, Vincent's voice was raw. "I've wanted this since the moment you opened that door," he confessed. "Since you looked at my children like they were worth saving. Since you cried rather than take food from their mouths." Sarah trembled in his arms. "I'm afraid," she whispered, "of your world, of what it will do to me, to us." Vincent tightened his hold. "I will burn it down before I let it touch you," he vowed. "I swear it." They stood there, wrapped in each other, wind whipping around them until the cold finally drove them inside. That night Sarah did not sleep in her own bed. She lay beside Vincent in his room, vast, dark, overlooking the lake. They did not make love, not yet. They simply held each other skin to skin beneath heavy blankets, his heartbeat steady against her ear, her tears wetting his chest. For the first time in years, neither felt alone. But peace never lasted in Vincent's world. 2 nights later, after a quiet family dinner after the children were tucked in, Marcus appeared at the terrace doors. "Sir, we have a problem." Vincent tensed immediately. Sarah felt the shift in him, the gentle lover replaced in an instant by the man the city feared. "What is it? Rival faction? Southside crew. They blocked the convoy on Lakeshore Drive 30 minutes ago. No shots fired. Just a message." Vincent's jaw clenched. "What message?" "They want a meeting. Tonight. Neutral ground. They say if you don't come, they'll make it personal." Vincent looked at Sarah, eyes dark with sudden fury, sudden fear. "Stay inside," he said quietly. "Lock the doors. Marcus's men will be here." Sarah's heart lurched. "Vincent." He cupped her face, brief, fierce. "I'll be back before dawn." He kissed her hard, possessive, then turned and walked into the night. Sarah stood at the window watching 3 black SUVs pull away, headlights cutting through the dark. Fear coiled in her chest, cold, suffocating. She knew this was his world. She knew danger lived in it. Yet the thought of losing him, of the children waking to find their father gone, tore something vital inside her. She sank to the floor back against the wall, arms wrapped around her knees, and waited. Hours passed. Then close to 3 a.m, the front door opened. Vincent stepped inside, coat torn at the shoulder, a thin cut along his cheekbone, knuckles raw. Sarah ran to him. He caught her before she reached him, arms crushing her close. "They wanted territory," he said against her hair. "I told them no. They tried to push. My men handled it." Sarah pulled back, hands framing his face, thumbs brushing the blood. "You're hurt. A scratch." His voice was rough. "Nothing compared to what I'd feel if anything happened to you." She searched his eyes, saw the storm still raging there. "Take me upstairs," she whispered. Vincent lifted her without another word, carried her through the silent house, up the stairs, into his room. They did not speak again that night. They simply held each other skin against skin, heartbeat against heartbeat. Two people who had once believed love was impossible, now clinging to it like a lifeline. Outside, the wind howled off the lake. Inside, love burned brighter than fear. But the night had left its mark, and both of them knew the next confrontation would not end so quietly. November arrived in Chicago like a thief, quiet at first, then sharp and unrelenting. The lake wind carried ice, now rattling the mansion windows even through triple-pane glass. Sarah no longer woke cold. The house stayed warm day and night. Fireplaces crackled in every major room, soft throws waited on every chair. Yet the cold she felt most lived inside her chest, a quiet, gnawing fear that the warmth could vanish as suddenly as it had come. She moved through the days with careful grace. Mornings belonged to the children, oatmeal with cinnamon for Mia, scrambled eggs, soft enough for Nico's sensitive stomach, toast cut into stars for Luca because he loved surprises. Afternoons were lessons, simple math on a whiteboard, story time on the thick rug, breathing practice when Nico's chest grew tight. Evenings were family dinners now. Vincent home earlier each night, sleeves rolled to his elbows, laughing low when Mia told him about the dragon she drew, or when Luca insisted on feeding Sarah a bite of his dessert. They touched constantly now, small, stolen moments. His hand brushing her lower back as he passed her in the kitchen, her fingers threading through his when the children napped and the house grew still. Kisses in shadowed hallways, soft at first, then deeper, hungrier, until both were breathless and trembling. They made love in the dark hours before dawn, slow, reverent, fierce bodies, learning each other like sacred ground. Afterward, they lay tangled, his heartbeat steady against her ear, her tears wetting his shoulder because the joy felt too big, too fragile, too undeserved. Yet every night she dreamed of Englewood. She dreamed of the thin blanket, the cracked window letting wind slice through the hunger that twisted her stomach into knots. She woke, gasping, reaching for him instinctively, and he always pulled her close, murmuring apologies into her hair, even though none of it was his fault. The guilt lived in him too, deeper, older. He carried it in the lines around his eyes, in the way his jaw clenched when he thought no one watched, in the way he sometimes stared at the lake for long minutes as though searching for absolution in the dark water. He had told her everything. Slow confessions in the small hours about the orders he had given, the lives he had ended, the empire built on fear. He spoke of his father's cruelty, his own rise through blood, the wife he could not save. Each word cost him. Each word carved another piece from his soul. Sarah listened without judgment. She held him when he shook. She kissed the scars on his knuckles. She whispered that he was more than his past. He did not believe her. Not fully, but he wanted to. And that want tore him apart more than any bullet ever could. The first warning came quietly. A Tuesday afternoon, mid-November, Sarah took the children to the small private zoo Vincent owned membership to. Marcus drove. 2 additional cars followed at a discreet distance. The outing felt safe. Ordinary feeding giraffes watching penguins slide into water. Mia's delighted laughter when a monkey stole Luca's hat. They were leaving, crossing the parking lot toward the SUVs, when 3 men stepped from between parked vehicles. Dark coats, hands in pockets, faces calm but eyes hard. Marcus tensed immediately. "Mr. Rossi's family," one said, voice flat. "We just want a word." Sarah instinctively pulled the children closer. Mia whimpered. Nico's breathing hitched. Marcus stepped forward, calm, lethal. "You're on private property. Leave." The leader smiled, thin, cold. "Tell Rossi the Southside crew sends regards. And tell him next time we won't ask politely." They turned and walked away, slow, deliberate. No shots, no raised voices, just the promise of worse to come. Sarah's knees nearly buckled. She held the children tighter, whispering nonsense to keep them calm, while Marcus spoke rapidly into his earpiece. Vincent arrived within 20 minutes, SUV screeching to a halt, door flying open before it fully stopped. He reached them in 3 strides. He knelt, checked each child with shaking hands, then pulled Sarah into his arms so hard she gasped, Are you hurt? His voice cracked. No, she whispered. We're okay. His hold tightened, possessive, terrified. That night he did not sleep. He paced the bedroom, shirt, unbuttoned, hair disheveled, while Sarah sat on the edge of the bed watching him. They're testing me, he said finally. Seeing how far they can push before I push back. Sarah's heart ached. Then push back, she said softly. Protect them. Protect us. Vincent stopped, looked at her with eyes full of torment. I swore I would leave most of it behind, he said. For you. For them. But they won't let me. Sarah rose, crossed to him, cupped his face. Then do what you must, she whispered. But come home to us. He kissed her desperate bruising, then left the room. She heard him in the office downstairs, low voices, clipped orders. The next confrontation happened 3 nights later. Vincent had gone to a meeting neutral ground downtown warehouse district. Sarah stayed home reading to the children, tucking them in, trying not to watch the clock. Midnight passed. 1 in the morning. 2. At 2:30, the front door burst open. Vincent staggered in, coat torn, blood on his lip, knuckles split. Sarah ran to him. He caught her, held her so tightly she felt his heart hammering against hers. They tried to jump me in the alley, he said, against her hair. 4 men. Marcus got me out. Sarah pulled back, hands framing his face, searching for wounds. You're bleeding. Just a split lip. He tried to smile, failed. They wanted me to cede territory. I refused. Sarah led him to the bathroom, cleaned the cut with trembling fingers, pressed a cold cloth to his swelling cheek. Vincent watched her eyes, dark, tormented. I should send you away, he whispered. Somewhere safe. Until this ends. Sarah shook her head fiercely. No, I won't leave you. I won't leave them. Vincent closed his eyes, pain carving deeper lines into his face. I don't deserve you, he said hoarsely. Sarah kissed him soft, then deeper, tasting blood and salt and fear. You do, she whispered against his mouth. You do. They made love on the bathroom floor. Desperate, urgent clothes, half-removed hands clutching as though the world might end if they let go. Afterward, they lay tangled on the tile breath, ragged hearts pounding in unison. Vincent buried his face in her neck. I love you, he said, voice breaking. God help me, I love you so much it hurts. Sarah held him tighter. I love you too, she whispered. All of you, even the parts that scare me. But love did not stop danger. It only made the danger sharper. The next morning, while Sarah fed the children breakfast, Marcus entered the dining room. Face grim. Sir, we found the leak. Vincent stilled. Who? Marcus looked at Sarah, then away. Your cousin, Marco. He's been feeding information to the Southside crew for months. Money, territory, revenge for perceived slights. Vincent's fork clattered to the plate. Sarah felt the air leave the room. Marco, Vincent's cousin, the man who had carried Mia as a baby, who stood as godfather to the twins, who had been at Vincent's side since they were boys. Betrayal, cold, absolute, shattering. Vincent rose, slowly, face white. Where is he gone? Marcus said. Disappeared last night. We think he's with them now. Vincent's hands clenched into fists. Sarah reached for him, touched his arm. He looked down at her, eyes wild with pain, fury, disbelief. I trusted him, he said, voice raw. With everything. Sarah stood, wrapped her arms around his waist. I'm here, she whispered. We're here. Vincent held her, shaking. And in that moment, surrounded by luxury he had built through blood, betrayed by blood, Vincent Rossi felt the full weight of his world crashing down. Yet he looked at Sarah, at the woman who had once had nothing and still given everything, and knew one truth above all others. He would protect her. He would protect their children, even if it meant destroying the only family he had ever known, even if it meant tearing his own heart out. Because love for her burned hotter than remorse, fiercer than guilt, stronger than betrayal, and he would let it consume him before he let anyone take her from him. The mansion felt different after Marco's betrayal, quieter, colder, as though the walls themselves held their breath. Sarah moved through the days with a new wariness. She still read to the children, still held Nico through his breathing treatments, still kissed Mia goodnight and tucked Luca's stuffed bear under his arm. But every shadow in the hallway made her flinch. Every distant car engine outside the gates set her heart racing. She slept with one of Vincent's shirts clutched in her fist, his scent the only thing that steadied her when nightmares came. Vincent barely slept at all. He spent nights in the office papers spread across the desk, phone pressed to his ear, voice low and lethal as he hunted for Marco's trail. When he came to bed long after midnight, he would slide beneath the covers without a word, pull her close and hold her as though she might vanish if he loosened his grip. His kisses were fiercer now, almost punishing, full of guilt and fear and a desperate need to prove she was still real, still his. Sarah let him. She needed it too, the reminder that love could survive even this. One afternoon, late November, sky heavy with the promise of snow, she slipped into the office while Vincent was out meeting with Marcus. The children napped. The house was silent except for the low hum of the furnace. She told herself she was looking for Ellen's medical file, something routine innocent. But her feet carried her to the desk drawer she had opened once before. The folder was still there, yellowed edges, her father's name typed neatly across the top. She opened it again. This time she read every page. Hospital reports, police summaries, a single coroner's note, cause of death blunt force trauma consistent with fall from scaffolding. But attached beneath, paper-clipped, almost hidden, was a typed memo on Rossi family letterhead dated 9 years earlier. Courier J. Harper attempted to terminate employment after learning of cargo contents. Refusal to cooperate. Order executed per protocol. Body staged as workplace accident. Family to be compensated anonymously. Medical funeral ongoing support. No further contact. Initialed at the bottom V. R. Senior Vincent's father. Sarah's knees gave way. She sank into the leather chair, breath shallow, vision blurring. Her father had not died in an accident. He had been murdered. On orders from the man who raised Vincent. And Vincent had known, had paid the bills, had watched from afar, had carried the secret like a blade in his chest for nearly a decade. The room spun. She pressed her palms to the desk, nails digging into wood, trying to anchor herself. Dizziness crashed over her in waves. Numbness spread from her fingertips upward. Her heart hammered so hard it hurt, sharp stabbing pain behind her ribs. Footsteps in the hallway. Vincent. He stepped through the door, saw her face, and froze. The folder lay open on the desk between them. He did not speak. He simply stood there, shoulders rigid, face draining of color, while the truth hung heavy and ugly in the air. Sarah looked up at him, eyes swimming, voice barely a whisper. You knew. Vincent closed the door behind him, slow, deliberate. Yes. The single word sliced deeper than any knife. Sarah's hands shook so violently the papers rustled. My father. Her voice cracked. He wasn't careless on a job site. He was executed. Because he tried to leave. Because he wouldn't carry whatever poison your family was moving. Vincent's throat worked. He was a good man, he said quietly. He wanted out. My father didn't allow it. Sarah pressed a hand to her mouth, tears spilling over. And you, she whispered. You were already part of it. You were 23. You could have stopped it. Vincent flinched visibly, as though she had struck him. I didn't know until after, he said, voice raw. Not the full truth. I found out years later when I took over. I couldn't bring him back. I could only make sure you and your mother didn't starve. I paid everything, hospital, funeral, monthly support. I thought it was the least I could do. Sarah stood chair, scraping back legs unsteady. The least. Her voice rose, shaking, breaking. You let my mother bury her husband thinking it was an accident. You let me grow up believing my father was clumsy, careless. You watched me sell my mother's necklace for grocery money. You watched me lose my job, lose my home, lose everything, and you never told me. Vincent took one step forward, hands raised, pleading. I was ashamed, he said, voice cracking. Every time I thought of telling you, I saw your face, the way you looked at me that first night, like I was worth trusting. I couldn't bear to lose that. I couldn't bear to see you look at me the way you're looking now. Sarah's chest heaved, sobs tearing free. I trusted you, she whispered. I loved you. I let you hold me. I let you inside me. And all this time, Vincent dropped to his knees before her knees hitting marble with a dull thud. I know, he said, voice breaking. I know what I've done. I've hated myself every day since I found out. I've carried it like poison in my blood. But Sarah, please hear me. I never meant to hurt you. I only wanted to protect you. From the truth. From me. Sarah stared down at him, the most powerful man in Chicago, on his knees before her, tears tracking down his face. Hands clenched so tightly, his knuckles bled white. Something inside her shattered. She sank to the floor in front of him, knees meeting his, reached out and cupped his face with trembling hands. I hate what your family did, she whispered. I hate what it made you carry. I hate that my father died because of it. But I don't hate you. Vincent's breath shuddered. I don't understand how you can't. Sarah leaned forward, forehead resting against his. Because I see you, she said softly. I see the man who carried his children through a storm. The man who paid my mother's bills when no one else would. The man who changed his world because 3 little children needed safety. The man who loves me so much it breaks him. Tears slipped down both their faces. Vincent's hands rose hesitant, covered hers against his cheeks. I love you, he said, voice wrecked. More than anything. More than power. More than this empire. More than my own life. And I will spend every day trying to be worthy of you. Sarah kissed him slow, deep, full of grief and forgiveness and desperate need. The kiss turned fierce, hungry, almost violent, teeth clashing, hands clutching bodies, pressing together on the cold marble floor, as though they could erase the pain by consuming each other. They made love there among scattered papers and old secrets, raw, urgent, tear-soaked. No gentleness this time. Only need, only surrender, only the fierce determination to hold on when everything else threatened to pull them apart. When it ended, both shaking, breathless, tangled together on the floor, Vincent pressed his forehead to hers. "I'll tell you everything," he whispered. "No more secrets. No more hiding." Sarah nodded, tears still falling. "And I'll stay," she whispered back, "no matter what comes." Outside, snow began to fall soft, silent, covering the city in white. Inside, two wounded hearts clung to each other, bleeding broken, but finally fully open. Love had not erased the past, but it had given them the strength to face it. Together, winter tightened its grip on Chicago in the final days of November 2025. Snow fell in heavy, silent sheets, blanketing the Gold Coast in white, so pure it almost looked innocent. Inside the mansion, however, innocence had been stripped away. The children still laughed small, brave sounds in the playroom, but the adults moved like people waiting for the next blow. Sarah cooked breakfast with hands that trembled only when she thought no one watched. Vincent kissed her goodbye each morning with a desperation that bordered on violence, lips bruising hers, arms crushing her close as though he could imprint himself into her skin forever. The betrayal of Marco had left scars deeper than any bullet. Vincent hunted him relentlessly. Quiet orders given in shadowed rooms, men dispatched to every corner of the city. Yet Marco remained a ghost, slipping through surveillance, vanishing into the South Side streets he once claimed as his own. Every dead-end report carved another line into Vincent's face. Every sleepless night left him more hollow, more dangerous. Sarah watched the change in him with growing terror. He still held her at night, still whispered love against her throat, still made love to her with a tenderness that broke her heart. But the man who returned from meetings carried shadows in his eyes that no amount of light could chase away. He blamed himself for trusting Marco, for not seeing the rot sooner, for dragging Sarah and the children into a war he had sworn to end. Sarah blamed no one, but the world that had shaped him. One gray afternoon, snow swirling against the windows, she sat with Ellen in the private suite Vincent had arranged on the estate grounds. Ellen's new room overlooked the rose garden, now dormant under frost. But the space was warm, filled with soft blankets, fresh flowers, and the steady beep of monitors that tracked her breathing with clinical precision. Ellen held Sarah's hand, wrinkled fingers strong despite everything. "You're caring too much, my girl," Ellen said softly. "I see it in your eyes." Sarah tried to smile, failed. "I'm afraid, Mama. Every time he leaves the house, I think, this might be the day he doesn't come back." Ellen squeezed her hand, and if he doesn't, Sarah's breath caught sharp, painful. "I don't know how to live without him." Ellen studied her eyes, wise, weary, loving. "Then fight for him," she said. "The way you fought for me when we had nothing. The way you fought for those babies the night they came to your door." Sarah bowed her head, tears falling onto their joined hands. "I'm trying." That night after the children slept, Vincent came to her in the bedroom. He looked haunted, shirt untucked, tie discarded somewhere, hair disheveled from running hands through it too many times. Sarah rose from the bed, crossed to him, cupped his face. "What happened?" Vincent closed his eyes, leaned into her touch. "Marco sent a message," he said quietly. "Through a courier. He has your mother. And the twins." The world tilted. Sarah's knees buckled. Vincent caught her before she fell. "He took Luca and Nico from the playground behind the estate." Vincent continued, voice raw. "While Mia was inside with you, he used the old service gate. Someone left it unlocked. He wants me to step down, hand over the family, or he starts with the boys." Sarah's breath came in shallow, panicked bursts. "He wouldn't hurt them," she whispered, more plea than certainty. "He's their godfather." Vincent's laugh was bitter, broken. "He's already hurt them. He took them from their beds while they slept." Sarah pressed her hands to her mouth, horror rising like bile. Vincent pulled her against him, arms iron bands around her shaking body. "I'll get them back," he vowed. "I'll get Ellen back. I swear it on my life." Sarah clung to him, nails digging into his shirt. "Don't go alone." "I won't." His voice cracked. "But Sarah, he demanded you come too. Alone. To the old steel mill on the south side. He says you're the price for their lives." Sarah went still. Vincent pulled back, searched her face, eyes wild with fear. "I told him no," he said fiercely. "I told him I'd burn the city before I let him touch you." Sarah looked up at him, tears streaming. "But if I don't go..." Vincent shook his head violently. "No. I won't use you as bait. I won't risk you." Sarah lifted her hands, cupped his face, forced him to meet her eyes. "They're children," she whispered. "Your children. My children now." And Ellen, she's all I have left of my old life. If there's even a chance, Vincent's breath shuddered. I can't lose you, he said, voice breaking. Not you, not after everything. Sarah kissed him soft, then fierce, pouring every ounce of love, fear, determination into it. You won't lose me, she whispered against his mouth. I trust you. I trust you to come for us. Vincent buried his face in her neck, shoulders shaking. They held each other for long minutes, snow tapping against the window like impatient fingers. Then Sarah stepped back, wiped her tears, lifted her chin. Tell him I'll come. Vincent stared at her torment, carving deep furrows across his face. Sarah, I know what I'm doing, she said softly. I've been powerless before. I've been hungry. I've been cold. I've been nothing. But I've never been helpless when someone needed me. Not then. Not now. Vincent closed his eyes, pain so raw it stole her breath. Then he nodded once, slow defeated. The meeting was set for midnight. An abandoned steel mill on the far south side, rusted girders, broken windows, snow drifting through holes in the roof. Sarah rode in the back of an unmarked car alone except for the driver Vincent trusted. She wore a simple coat, new warm, but underneath she still felt the ghost of thin sweaters and cracked linoleum. Her hands shook in her lap. Her heart hammered so hard she felt dizzy. The car stopped at the edge of the lot. She stepped out into the snow wind biting through her coat. Marco waited at the entrance, flanked by 3 men she did not recognize. He looked older, haggard eyes hollow. Sarah, he said, voice almost gentle. You came. Where are they? She asked, voice steady despite the terror clawing her throat. Inside. He gestured. Come. She walked past him head high into the cavernous dark. Ellen sat tied to a chair, gagged, eyes wide with fear but alive. Luca and Nico huddled beside her, small shivering faces streaked with tears. Sarah's knees nearly gave way. She ran to them, dropped to the floor, gathered the twins into her arms. I'm here, she whispered, rocking them. I'm here. You're safe now. Ellen's muffled sob broke behind the gag. Sarah reached for her untied. The cloth held her mother's face in trembling hands. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. Ellen shook her head, tears falling. My brave girl. Marco watched, expression unreadable. You shouldn't have come, he said quietly. Vincent will never forgive me. Sarah looked up at him, eyes blazing through tears. Then let them go, she said. Take me instead, but let them go. Marco's laugh was hollow. You think it's that simple, Vincent's empire for 3 lives? No. He has to choose. Step down or watch them die. Sarah stood slowly, placing herself between Marco and the children. You won't touch them, she said, voice low, fierce. Not while I'm breathing. Marco studied her, something almost like respect flickering in his eyes. You're braver than I thought. Sarah lifted her chin. I've had nothing, she said softly. I've lost everything once. I'm not afraid to lose it again. But I will not let you take them from him. Silence stretched, thick, heavy. Then outside the night exploded with sound. Tires screeching. Doors slamming. Shouts. Vincent's men. Marco's face twisted, rage, regret, resignation. He raised his gun, pointed it at Sarah. You should have stayed away. Sarah stepped forward, shielding the children with her body. The first shot rang out not from Marco, from the shadows. Marco staggered, clutching his shoulder gun, dropping. Vincent burst through the side door, weapon raised, eyes wild. He saw Sarah, saw the children, saw Ellen, and something inside him snapped. He crossed the space in seconds, scooping Sarah and the twins into his arms, shielding them with his body while his men secured the room. Marco slumped against a pillar, bleeding, defeated. Vincent looked down at him, face carved from stone. You were family, he said, voice low, lethal. And you took my children. Marco met his eyes, tears mixing with blood. I thought I was saving the family. Vincent's hand tightened on his gun. Then he lowered it. You're done, he said quietly. You walk away tonight. You never come back. Or I end this here. Marco stared at him, long broken moment. Then he nodded slowly. Vincent turned away, disgust and grief warring across his face. He carried Sarah and the twins outside into the snow, into waiting arms. Ellen was freed, wrapped in blankets, placed gently in an ambulance Vincent had standing by. Sarah clung to him, shaking, sobbing while medics checked the children. Vincent held her face buried in her hair. I thought I lost you, he whispered, voice wrecked. Sarah cupped his face, kissed him through tears. You didn't, she said. You never will. They stood in the snow, surrounded by flashing lights, by armed men, by the wreckage of betrayal, and held each other like the only solid thing left in the world. Love had not prevented the pain. But it had survived it, and in that survival, raw, bloody, unbreakable, they found something stronger than fear. They found forever. The snow had thickened into a blinding curtain by the time Vincent's convoy reached the outskirts of the old steel mill district. Headlights cut pale tunnels through the white tires crunching over frozen ruts in the access road. Sarah sat in the back of the lead vehicle beside Marcus, hands folded tightly in her lap, breath fogging the window in shallow bursts. She had insisted on coming this far. Vincent had fought, her voice cracking with raw panic, but in the end he had relented, because he saw the same unbreakable resolve in her eyes that had first drawn him to her on that storm-soaked night in Englewood. She wore the simple wool coat he had bought her weeks earlier, soft, expensive, lined with cashmere. Beneath it, one of his old flannel shirt sleeves rolled up the fabric, still carrying faint traces of his cologne. She had chosen it deliberately. If tonight went wrong, if Marco pulled the trigger, she feared he might. She wanted the last thing she felt against her skin to be Vincent. The vehicle slowed. Stopped. Marcus turned in the driver's seat. 2 minutes until we move, he said quietly. Stay low. When you hear the signal, 3 sharp honks, get down and stay down. Sarah nodded, throat too tight for words. She looked out at the hulking silhouette of the mill, rusted girders like broken bones against the sky, windows shattered into jagged black mouths. Somewhere inside, Ellen, frail and coughing in the cold. Luca and Nico, small and terrified, clinging to each other. And Marco, once family, now poison. Sarah closed her eyes, felt the old hunger rise like a ghost. The memory of nights when she had gone to bed with nothing but tap water in her stomach. The memory of Ellen's labored breathing through cracked lips, because the inhaler had run empty. The memory of selling her mother's wedding ring for $75.40 at a pawn shop on 63rd Street so they could eat for 3 more days. Those memories had once crushed her. Now they fueled her. She opened her eyes, met Marcus's in the rearview mirror. I'm ready. He nodded once, respect flickering in his gaze. The door opened. Sarah stepped into the snow wind, whipping flakes against her cheeks like tiny knives. She walked forward alone, boots sinking into drifts, heart hammering so violently she felt dizzy, lightheaded, the world tilting at the edges. Marco waited just inside the main entrance, silhouetted against the faint glow of emergency lanterns strung from rusted beams. He held no gun in sight, but 2 men flanked him, hands resting on holstered weapons. Sarah, he called, voice carrying over the wind. You really came. She stopped 10 feet away, chin lifted. Where are they, Marco? Tilted his head toward the deeper shadows. Safe. For now. Sarah took another step, snow crunching underfoot. Let me see them. Marco studied her, long searching. You're braver than I expected, he said quietly. Or more foolish. Sarah's voice stayed soft, steady. I've been both before. Let me see the children. A moment later, Ellen appeared, first supported between 2 guards, coat missing, thin nightgown fluttering around her legs in the draft. Her face was pale, lips blue-tinged, but her eyes found Sarah and filled with tears. Baby girl. Sarah's knees nearly buckled, pain lancing through her chest. Mama. Then the twins, Luca and Nico, pushed past the guards, small legs churning through snowdrifts straight into her arms. Sarah dropped to her knees, scooping them close, rocking them against her chest. I've got you, she whispered, voice breaking. I've got you. You're safe now. Luca sobbed into her neck. Nico clung to her coat, small fingers knotted in wool, wheezing softly from cold and fear. Sarah looked up at Marco over their heads. Let them go, she said, quiet, fierce. Let my mother go. You want Vincent, you'll have to go through me first. Marco's expression flickered something almost like regret. I never wanted it to come to this, he said. But Vincent's changing, softening. Letting a woman, a nobody from the South Side, turn him into something he's not. The family needs strength, not sentiment. Sarah rose slowly, keeping the twins behind her, Ellen beside her, now frail hand gripping Sarah's arm. You call love weakness? She asked, voice trembling but clear. Then you've never loved anyone enough to die for them. Marco's jaw tightened. Enough talk. He raised his hand signal. One of his men stepped forward, gun drawn. Sarah pushed Ellen and the children back, placing herself directly in the line of fire. The shot never came. 3 sharp honks pierced the night Vincent's signal. Then chaos. Vincent's team poured in from side entrances, swift, coordinated voices, low and controlled. No wild gunfire, no screams, only precise movement. Men disarmed Marco's guards, forced to their knees, zip ties snapping into place. Marco spun, reaching for the gun at his waist. Vincent stepped from the shadow's weapon, raised eyes locked on his cousin. Drop it. Marco hesitated, then let the gun fall into the snow. Vincent crossed the distance, never taking his eyes off Marco, until he reached Sarah. He pulled her into his arms, crushing her against his chest, while his men secured the twins and Ellen. Sarah clung to him, sobbing relief and terror, crashing together in violent waves. Vincent's voice broke against her hair. I thought I was too late." "You weren't," she whispered. "You came." He pulled back, cupped her face, searched her eyes. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, tears streaming. "No, but they were so scared." Vincent looked past her to the twins now, wrapped in blankets by medics, and to Ellen, who sat on a stretcher oxygen mask pressed gently to her face. His gaze returned to Marco, still kneeling hands bound. Vincent walked to him, slow, deliberate. Marco lifted his head, eyes wet. "I thought I was saving the family," he said hoarsely. "I thought you were throwing it away." Vincent crouched eye level. "You took my children," he said, voice low, lethal. "You took the woman I love. You took the only light I've had in years. There is no forgiveness for that." Marco closed his eyes, tears slipping free. Vincent stood, turned away, disgust and grief warring across his features. "Take him," he told Marcus. "Somewhere he can't hurt anyone again. No more blood. Not tonight." Marcus nodded, led Marco away into the snow. Vincent returned to Sarah, pulled her close again. The medics had the twins stable, breathing treatments administered, warm blankets wrapped tight. Ellen reached for Sarah, squeezed her hand. "My brave girl," she whispered again. Sarah knelt beside her, kissed her forehead. "I'm sorry, Mama. I'm so sorry." Ellen shook her head, eyes shining. "You saved us. All of us." Vincent helped Sarah to her feet, arm around her waist, supporting her as the adrenaline crash left her shaking, dizzy, numb. They walked out of the mill together, snow swirling around them. Vincent carrying Nico, Sarah holding Luca's small hand, Ellen on a stretcher, guided by medics. At the edge of the lot, before the waiting ambulances, Vincent stopped. He turned Sarah to face him, snowflakes catching in her lashes. "I almost lost you tonight," he said, voice rough. "I almost lost everything." Sarah reached up, brushed snow from his cheek. "You didn't." Vincent leaned down, kissed her slow, deep, full of everything he had never known how to say. When he pulled back, forehead resting against hers, he whispered, "Marry me." Sarah's breath caught. Vincent's hand rose, cupped her face. "Not tonight. Not like this. When the world stops trying to tear us apart. When I can give you the life you deserve, not the one I dragged you into. Marry me, Sarah. Be my wife. Be their mother. Be mine forever." Tears spilled down Sarah's cheeks, mixing with melting snow. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes. 1,000 times yes." Vincent kissed her again, fiercer this time, pouring every promise, every vow, every broken piece of himself into it. Around them snow fell. Sirens wailed in the distance. The twins clung to them. Ellen watched, smiling through tears. And in that frozen, shattered place, love did not merely survive. It triumphed. Fierce. Unbreakable. Eternal. The weeks following the mill became the quietest season of their lives. Snow continued to fall across Chicago, softening the sharp edges of the city, blanketing the Gold Coast in a hush that felt almost sacred. Vincent dismantled what remained of the illegal arteries of the Rossi family, with a surgeon's precision. Quiet meetings in downtown offices, papers signed in the dead of night, men reassigned to legitimate construction sites, restaurants, real estate holdings. The empire did not collapse. It transformed. Wealth remained immense, unapologetic, but the blood that once fed it dried up and blew away like ash. Sarah watched the change in him the way one watches dawn arrive after the longest night. Vincent came home earlier each evening. He played on the floor with the children, building block towers with Luca, reading picture books to Mia in voices so gentle they made Sarah's throat close, sitting beside Nico during breathing treatments, and counting out slow inhales with the same patience he once reserved only for deals and threats. The man who had once carried death in his pockets now carried crayons, storybooks, and inhalers, and every night he came to Sarah. They made love with a tenderness that bordered on worship, slow, reverent, as though each touch erased another scar. Afterward, he held her against his chest, her small frame curled into his larger one, whispering promises into her hair. "I never thought I could have this," he said one night, voice rough with wonder. "A home. A family. You." Sarah traced the scar along his jaw, faint reminder of a life he was leaving behind. "You always could," she whispered. "You just needed someone to show you it was possible." He kissed her, palm eyes glistening. "You showed me." Spring arrived in early April, 2026. Tentative at first, then bold. Cherry blossoms lined the paths around Lake Michigan. The rose garden behind the mansion burst into color, pink, red, white petals drifting like confetti across the lawn. One Saturday afternoon, Vincent asked Sarah to take a walk with him and the children. Nothing unusual. They had walked the lakefront trail many times since the mill, hand in hand, Mia skipping ahead, the twins riding on Vincent's shoulders or clinging to Sarah's legs. But today felt different. Vincent wore a simple white shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows, no tie, no suit. The children were dressed in soft pastels, Mia in pink, the twins in matching blue. Sarah wore the pale lavender dress he had bought her months earlier. the one she had once been too ashamed to wear because it felt too beautiful for someone who had once counted $41 like treasure. They reached the small overlook near the Adler Planetarium, the place where Lake Michigan stretched wide in endless sunlight, scattering diamonds across the water. Vincent stopped. The children ran ahead, Mia, gathering petals, Luca and Nico chasing each other in giggling circles. Vincent turned to Sarah. His hands shook only slightly when he took hers. "I've spent my life taking," he said quietly. "Power, control, fear. I thought that was the only way to keep what mattered safe. Then you opened a door in a storm, with nothing left to give, and you gave everything anyway." Sarah's throat tightened. Vincent sank to one knee slowly, deliberately. From his pocket, he drew a small velvet box. Inside a single diamond, simple, brilliant set in a thin platinum band. "Mia asked me to do this right," he said, voice thick. "She said you deserve a real story, so here it is." He looked up at her gray eyes, shining with tears he did not try to hide. "Sarah Harper, woman who had nothing and still saved my children, saved me. You are the only thing I've ever wanted that I didn't know how to take, so I'm asking instead." He swallowed hard. "Will you marry me? Will you be my wife? Will you let me spend every day trying to give you the safety, the warmth, the love you gave us when we had nothing left?" Behind them, Mia stepped forward, small hands holding a single pink rose. "Mommy," she whispered, voice trembling with hope. "Will you stay forever?" Sarah's vision blurred, tears spilling freely. She looked from Mia to the twins, Luca and Nico watching with wide, trusting eyes, then back to Vincent. The man who had once terrified the city knelt before her, stripped of armor, offering everything. "Yes," she whispered, voice breaking. "Yes, forever." Vincent rose, slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into his arms and kissed her deep, slow, full of every promise he had ever made and every one he would keep. The children cheered Mia, throwing petals, the twins clapping small hands. Ellen, now strong enough to walk short distances, stood a few paces away, tears streaming down her smiling face. They married 3 weeks later, small private in the rose garden behind the mansion. No press, no spectacle, only the people who mattered. Marcus stood as best man, quiet, proud. Mia scattered rose petals down the short aisle, pink dress fluttering. Luca and Nico carried the rings, tiny hands shaking with excitement. Ellen sat in the front row, oxygen tube, discreet but present, holding Sarah's hand until the last moment. When Sarah walked toward Vincent, simple white dress, no veil, hair loose in the breeze, she felt the weight of every cold night, every empty cupboard, every tear she had cried alone. And she felt the lightness of every moment since, every laugh from the children, every gentle touch from Vincent, every breath Ellen now took without struggle. Vincent waited at the end of the aisle, dark suit, no tie, eyes shining. When she reached him, he took her hands, voice low for her alone. "You saved me," he whispered. "Long before I ever saved you." Sarah smiled through tears. "We saved each other." They spoke their vows under the roses, simple, honest. "I promise to love you," Vincent said, voice rough with emotion, regardless of skin color, bank account, or past mistakes. "I promise to protect you, to cherish you, to build a life where you never feel powerless again." Sarah's voice trembled but held. "I promise to love you, all of you, the man who is broken and the man who is healing. I promise to remind you every day that love is stronger than any empire, richer than any fortune." They kissed soft, then deep, while petals drifted around them, and the children cheered. Afterward, they sat together on the lawn, family close, watching the sun sink over the lake. Ellen leaned against Sarah's shoulder. "Kindness," she whispered, "is never wasted. It returns sometimes in ways we never expect." Sarah looked at Vincent, his arm around her, the children curled against them both. She thought of the $41 she had once counted like gold. She thought of the storm that had brought him to her door. She thought of every cold night, every hungry dawn, every tear she had shed alone. And she understood fully, deeply, that wealth and poverty could never separate love and compassion when the heart chose to open. Knowledge is power when it teaches us empathy. Knowledge reminds us that no one is beyond redemption. Knowledge shows that true riches lie in the people we choose to hold close. Knowledge heals when we share it with gentleness. Knowledge lights the darkest paths. Lesson after lesson, life offers us grace. Lesson upon lesson reveals that love transcends every divide. Lesson by lesson, we learn to forgive ourselves and others. Lesson through lesson, compassion becomes our greatest strength. Lesson woven into every breath teaches us that kindness always returns. Education of the heart begins in the smallest acts. Education of the soul grows when we choose love over fear. Education in humanity flourishes in forgiveness. Education through hardship shows us our own resilience. Education of the spirit reminds us we are never truly alone. If you are watching this video tonight, I wish you good health, a joyful life, and daily peace. Thank you so much for staying with us until the end. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel Alex Truths so you won't miss any of our daily stories. Hit like and share with someone who needs to hear this today. How did this story make you feel? Does it remind you of anything in your own life? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one, and I truly want to hear the emotions living deep inside your heart. Goodbye for now. And I promise we'll see you again in the next video. Disclaimer: all stories on this channel are fictional and created solely for entertainment purposes. Any resemblance to real people, events, or places is purely coincidental.